And I'm happy to announce that our candidates have passed the first test. We gave them complicated instructions about where to sit, and they all figured it out and sat in the right seat. So let's have a round of applause for the candidates. Good start, good start. So welcome, everybody. I am Richard Frieder. It's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Hartford Vota Coalition. I'm with Community Capacity Builders and Hartford Listens, one of the members of the coalition. The Hartford Votes Coalition is a coalition of 14 organizations that are committed to increasing voter engagement in Hartford. Among other things, we organize and run candidate events like tonight's, so we're glad that you're here to be part of it. We did, for tonight's event, invite all candidates for governor. We did our best to avoid conflicts, date conflicts on the calendar. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to us, the Republican Party had organized a debate for tonight down in Fairfield. So we don't have any Republicans with us, unfortunately, but we have most of the rest of the candidates. We did offer to the Republicans to try to find a new date. We wanted to get this event in before the conventions, which are next month, and there was no date that would work. So we will be trying to find a date after the convention so that the Republicans have an opportunity to speak here in Hartford. Just a few things before we get started. I want to say thank you to the many Hartford Votes Coalition volunteers who helped organize this event. Hartford Votes Coalition members who helped out, wave your hands or stand up or something. Okay, thank you all. Yes, let's have a round of applause. And by the way, we have a number of people here tonight from the League of Women Voters, which is a member of the coalition, so thanks to all of you. This event would not happen. We're all volunteers, by the way. The coalition is an all-volunteer operation, so. I want to thank Stan McCauley, who's in the back recording this event, and it will be on accesstv.org, so thank you, Stan. I want to thank, yes, let's hear it for Stan. By the way, accesstv.org has a wealth of resources, recordings of all kinds of events from around Hartford, so I urge you to check it out. Right here in front of me is Jim Cusick, our sign language interpreter. We're glad that Jim is with us tonight. We do have a couple of people who are ready to provide English-Spanish translation if anybody needs it. Lourdes Montalvo is one of those folks. So if anybody needs that translation, please see Lourdes. And the other person is Lourdes Fonseca. I'm not sure whether she's here. Just ask for somebody named Lourdes and you won't go wrong. She just walked in. Hi, Lourdes. Thank you to both of you. Also want to thank the Cornerstone Deli that contributed some cookies in the back. I want to give a shout out to Linda Bear, a member of the Hartford Votes Coalition who has been a workhorse and a dedicated member for years, and she's been under the weather lately, and this is kind of her first return to our activities. So welcome back, Linda, and thank you. You all should have received when you came in a program and a feedback form, an evaluation form that looks like this. Please, before you leave tonight, we'd really appreciate it if you'd fill this out. Your feedback on this event will help us make future events even better than tonight, so we invite you to fill that out. Speaking of future events, we don't have any firm plans yet, but we do expect to have other candidate events before the election, so please watch for those. And last but not least, restrooms are down the hall and to the right, should you need them. Emergency exits, there's one in the back here, and I guess that's it. There's one on the side here. Let's hope we don't need them. Finally, I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight. Carol Mulrady is from the League of Women Voters. She is a veteran of many candidate events. She has been a moderator at such events all over the state, and we're really fortunate that she's not only and her organization, the League, is a member of the Hartford Votes Coalition, but we're fortunate that she's here tonight to be our moderator. So thank you for coming, and please welcome Carol.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the nice introduction. I will just give you a very quick overview of the format that we have prepared for the candidates. The candidates were sent information that said that there is a bio provided. So we have asked them to try to emphasize in their 1-minute opening statement their positions or plans for governorship of Connecticut. And during their it's a 1-minute opening statement. The second phase or segment of this program will be two questions that are asked by, that have been developed by the Hartford Votes organization. The candidates will each have 2 minutes to answer those questions. We expect that we'll ask 2 of them. And after all candidates have had a chance to respond to those, the questions will be open to the audience. When you are forming a question for the candidates, we ask you to limit your question to factual information to a question, less than 30 seconds. Please don't editorialize, just ask your question, and then the candidates will have 1 minute to respond to your question. We will have people moving around with microphones to allow you to ask your question so everyone will be able to hear. Then we hope to have many, many questions available in the time we have allotted. You all have an evaluation sheet, or there is an evaluation sheet somewhere, and hopefully you will all fill it out so that Hartford Votes knows what was good, what might be improved upon, so that in future events we can continue to provide services like this to the community. So let me start with our candidates. We did a lottery to choose who would go in what order. And our opening statement is going to be from Mr. Ganem, and we are doing left to right. They are in the order, and we have asked them to come to the microphone to ask their questions.
Should I, if we take the microphone?
1 minute opening. There you go.
Thank you so much. I don't want to give Jonathan Harris my back, so I'll stand over here. With 1 minute, there's only a moment to kind of just say hello, introduce myself, and thank everyone for putting this forum together, for sponsoring it, and for allowing us the opportunity to address you here in Hartford. It's my pleasure and it's my honor to stand here as a candidate for governor of this great state. I sit now as the mayor of Bridgeport and am concerned, very concerned about where Connecticut is and where it's going. And I've said very clearly that we need to put Connecticut back on track, and in my view, it's with a focus on building a new Connecticut economy that works for everyone, not just for a few. And if I boil that down as I stand here on the stage in this beautiful library in downtown Hartford, in many ways it's about cities. It's about Hartford and Bridgeport, New Haven and Waterbury and all of our urban centers. And I believe in many ways, because of my experience, some almost 14 years collectively, facing the challenges that we face in our urban centers, frankly neglected financially by state policies that just don't do enough to allow cities to succeed the way that they should. I believe that our city should be the main focus and the engines in many ways that will drive a new and a better Connecticut economy. I don't say that just because of cities, but I think it's the best way and in the focused way, with my time up, to lift all of our cities and towns in Connecticut. I'll go on more when I get a couple questions, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And Guy Smith is next. 1 minute opening.
Thank you. My name is Guy Smith. I'm a Democrat. You can read my background in the program. One of the things that it says is that I've been in every crisis around the world with AmeriCares. I was on the first airplane to land in Haiti. I was in Sarajevo. I've been in Kabul right after 9/11. I've been in Baghdad. And why am I telling you that? Because I know how to deal with a crisis, stand in the middle of it, make real-time decisions that affect people's lives, and that's what this governorship needs where we are today. I believe in traditional democratic progressive values, all of them. Equal pay for women, reproductive rights, $15 minimum wage, not graduated. Now, more and more sensible gun control. I have an assault rifle ban, national rifle ban plan. You can read about it on our website. Guy Smith, candidate for governor. It will be different and better. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Jonathan Harris.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you to the League, to Hartford Votes. Thank you for being here, for stepping up, for your activism on the ground. That's why I'm here. Started my life, first half of it, in Hartford, Bowles Park, Burlington Street, Greenfield Street. My parents were activists. Blue Hill Civic Association in the early years, keeping the schools, keeping the neighborhood safe, protecting people on the streets, working together. That's why I've stood up in my life as a public servant, appointed elected official, mayor of West Hartford, council of House Democrat, state senator, deputy treasurer for Treasurer Napier, commissioner of consumer protection, or in my private sector job as a lawyer representing working families, small businesses, as an economic development company owner, where I actually was regulated by consumer protection, then I became the regulator. I have seen government from all sides. We have some talented people up here. We agree on most things. We need someone that can hit the ground running, that can lead by bringing people together. I'm the proven progressive problem solver that's been able to bring people together to create practical solutions.
Thank you. And next we have Oz Griebel.
Thanks, Carol. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Coalition for the opportunity. My name is Oz Griebel. I'm running as an independent along with my running mate, Monty Frank. Monty is a lifelong Democrat who's re-registered as an unaffiliated voter, and I'm a lifelong Republican who is re-registered as an unaffiliated voter. We're running as independents because we believe only an independent executive can bring both parties together to build the big tent so that the best ideas are identified and implemented. In order to get on the ballot, we need 7,500 signatures of registered voters. We're in the process of collecting those. If you're interested in joining the team, Kyle Liddy, our campaign manager in the back, has those petitions. We'd welcome your signature, welcome your joining the team. Our slogan is no parties, no politics, just solutions. And the elevator speech for the next 4 years is we're focused on retaining jobs, recruiting jobs, and creating jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Griebel. And next we have Micah Willatukonis.
You guys hear me without the mic? You all set with the timer?
Oh, yeah, don't worry about them. They're good.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, I feel that there are some self-serving and misguided people here tonight. I'm not here for money, for power, for glory. Next month will mark my 2-year anniversary from retiring from the Army. I'm here to continue my service honorably. I would like you to picture an emergency room doctor. This doctor is faced with a patient who was just in a severe car wreck. The car went off a cliff, and not only did the driver sustain multiple broken bones, but lost a ton of blood. This patient also has stage 3 cancer complicated by a heart condition caused by an infection. That patient's name is Connecticut. Our first priority must be to stabilize. My role when elected is similar to that of an emergency room doctor. I apologize, but I'm not willing to sit here tonight and listen to more lies and false promises. If you're truly seeking an honorable leader, then please follow me on social media, and my cell is also available. My flyer's in the back. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much. Susan Weissowitz.
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you. Connecticut is facing some very difficult problems, chief among them, young people leaving, families leaving because they can't find good paying jobs, seniors leaving because it's so expensive to live here, and even some of our biggest employers. And so what we need now is a collaborative leader with a record of getting difficult things done. As Secretary of the State for 12 years, I helped transform our voting system to create a system that protects voter rights, that has a paper trail and is hack-proof from the Russians. And when we started No one thought that we could get consensus, but we did. That's the kind of leader we need, a governor who can work in a collaborative way with the legislature to get things done. I also bring private sector business experience, which has given me some insights into what we need to do to fix Connecticut's economy, and I look forward to sharing some of those ideas with you this evening. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'm J.C. Wyatt. I actually have been in our campaign since now about a year, and I've met some great people along our way, and I can't wait to work with all of us along whoever wins our governorship. It's look now to bring it to you. You are the people that came out to reach out, to let to know and learn who we are, and that's what we want to learn you for you to do tonight. The reason is, I have plenty of experience, as we just heard. We have business experience, developing businesses and bringing companies here, how we can look at jobs, how we can bring ideas, tourism that can change the way Connecticut's looked upon. We said many times, our troubled city should not be what we're saying. Those should be our new opportunity cities, places to bring jobs, opportunity, and find what is going wrong and how we solution this. This team, with me and with all of us that are inside, I'm somebody that the Republicans don't fear because I once was them. Being a Democrat allows me to also look upon how to tie our legislature together, and together, I want you to know who I am, and again, J.C. Wyatt.
Thank you. And Lee Whitnam.
Well, I might hit every bump in the road along the way. Some people sail right through, but I hit every bump, and I have my whole life. And I thank God for all my trials and tribulations, and some of you know about the most recent one, because I've learned I am not one of these people. I'm different. My path has been different. I was dragged unlawfully into criminal court. I've had some very, very bad luck in Connecticut, and along the way I've met a lot of people who are down at the bottom like me. How can you expect someone who's had position and power to stand up for your rights and change the state? That's been the problem all along. Sovereign immunity. We are victim of the fact that we were one of the 13 original colonies. The King of England was sovereign. He extended his sovereignty. He could chop off your head with no downside to him because he was an extension of God. He then extended that power to his judges. We have judicial immunity and then quasi-judicial immunity. It's gone run amok. We need to move into the 21st century like all the other states west of the Missouri have gone, because that's what's driven us into the ground. And the only person who can do it is someone who's been aggrieved by the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the next phase here is our questions. So our timers, who are in the front row, and we thank the league members who are here to help us, are going to reset their clocks to 2 minutes, and each speaker can speak 2 minutes to this question.
Hello, my name is Destiny King. I am a member of the Hartford Communities That Care Youth Leadership Academy in the Young, Educated, and Determined to Succeed program. Over the past 27 weeks, I have been examining the intersections between education, poverty, violence, and trauma to develop policy and program recommendations. I served on the poverty work group, and the following is our recommendations. Organize resources to support entrepreneurs, expand efforts to provide highly qualified mentors for teens, to place priority on investments in affordable, high-quality childcare and early education, focus on giving people the tools to start new enterprises that will improve their circumstances and spur economic growth, as well as removing barriers to small business growth. Repair and strengthen the safety net to make sure there are safeguards in place that apply equally to all people. Reduce the large gaps between the very rich and the rest of society and make it easier for people to get into the middle class. Also, to address the gaps that persist for African Americans in educational attainment, employment, wages and income, family wealth and home ownership, health and infant mortality, and incarceration. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can support our recommendations.
Each speaker can speak 2 minutes to this question. The state legislature recently passed a bill that will result in the state making $550 million in debt payments for the city of Hartford over 20 years. Do you support this plan? How would you respond to legislators who want to modify the plan to just 2 years? And we will begin with Mr. Gannon.
Thank you so much. I had originally raised a number of questions about the plan, knowing that it was thought to be a $40 million infusion of cash for the city of Hartford that was badly needed. And then as it went along, there was a little bit of shock value to me and others about what the extent of it was. I will tell you, last night I had a very in-depth conversation with a number of very committed and focused local elected officials from the city of Hartford. And I was edified in so many ways, in detail, a granular level of some of the fiscal challenges far beyond the knowledge that I had on this topic. And I will tell you this, it doesn't deviate from the bigger picture, that I believe that we need a comprehensive policy for all of our cities that allows all of our cities not just to survive, but to succeed in a way that I hope that Hartford does. With this, you call it an infusion of cash, but really it's not an infusion of cash. It's a relief of what's looked at as overdue obligations to the city, as it was described to me, for being shortchanged year after year after year. And I say that for Hartford's benefit, and I've talked to the mayor of New Haven, who feels similarly situated in many ways, having to put a budget out that could further increase the levy on property taxes in that city, for short payments on pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, and my city as well. The challenge that we all face in our urban centers is to have the strength and partnership with the state government that recognizes the value and the importance of our cities. And this is an element that I think needs to move forward and needs our support for Hartford. And I've also put forth a proposal, somewhat different, maybe unique in a way, for Bridgeport, that I believe could, in some ways, have equally, I hope, a benefit for the city of Bridgeport. But part of, as described to me, this may be the first example of how we begin to develop an urban policy for our cities. And I'll say this again as I started in my opening. It's not just for the sake of the cities or the hundreds of thousands of people that live in our urban centers. Many times the most vulnerable, with the least means and with the greatest challenges, having been a mayor of a city that was once almost bankrupt, having left that job and come back, being called a comeback mayor for having made some serious mistakes.
Thank
but
you,
understanding
Mr. Ganem, your time is
needs
up.
to succeed. So I'll end it there. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Your question, I think, was some Republican members of the legislature are now questioning something that was passed by the legislature. It was in English, and I think Spanish too. Maybe these Republican guys need to go over here to UConn and take an English class and learn how to read it. It's what it said. Let me tell you what kind of governor I'm going to be. The state makes an agreement with the people of this state, with the people of this city, or a union, state worker union, or teachers. We're going to keep that agreement. We're just going to keep it. They need to just read what they passed. And they can always pass another law and undo it if they want to, but they just want to talk about it. It's an election year, guys. That's what they do. Oh, and I wanted to just say, it's just not true that Ned is at that Republican thing tonight. It's not true. It's a canard. But seriously, our cities are important, and they're key anchors in our state. I met with Mayor Bronin right before this meeting. Yesterday, I met with Mayor Harp of New Haven. Joe and I actually had a cigar about this last Saturday. We talked about a lot of things, and this was one of them.
I didn't inhale.
Yeah, I didn't inhale either. We have to grow our way out of the fiscal mess this state is in. Everywhere you go down the street here, there are only two solutions that you hear. Raise taxes, kill state workers. Raise taxes, kill teachers. That's not how we're going to do it. In my administration, we're going to grow, we're going to bring jobs in, we're going to create new access to capital for small businesses, we're going to create microfinancing in the inner city to bring jobs in, we're going to recruit millennials in, we're going to create more of the high tech that we have. This benefits everywhere in the state, including our cities. We have to do this, like I said, different, better, fresh ideas, fresh new ways of thinking, and not doing things that damage our state for political purposes. Remember that $50 thing that Jody Rell did instead of paying the pension fund? We're not going to do it that way anymore.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris.
Thank you. The $550 million question. We need vibrant cities. If we do not have vibrant cities, we will not survive. But vibrant cities are not just gleaming downtowns. We need to figure out a way to get opportunity, economic development into the neighborhoods in addition to that. And there's a couple things that we can do. First, you got to support the cities, and money is part of it. But again, it's not the only thing. We need to figure out how to get away from this map that we have that was designed in the 17th century around a parish or how far it took a horse to ride an hour that doesn't represent modern service delivery. We cannot have our capital city or the mayor's city have the challenges there and not be able to spread out the burden, spread out those challenges, spread out the cost for those challenges. It is immoral, and it also is fiscally and economically irresponsible. Representative McCluskey and I, back when we were in the legislature, he represented the South End, we had a series of bills to provide more incentives for municipalities to share services, to spread costs out. We need to pick that up. A much more robust series of incentives and disincentives designed to not only spread out costs, but to build trust over time so that we realize that we're all in this together. We can't stop there. We also have to look at economic development, and not this top-down economic development, but big giveaways to big companies, big tax breaks. I'm talking about bottom-up, organic economic development, knowing where to get out of the way, to incent private sector development, not to focus on the top 1%, but on the entrepreneurs, the small businesses. That's what churns the economy. It's the good jobs, not the service jobs, and we could do that. That's what we did to make West Hartford a regional center. Attracting private sector development. That's where the young people now want to live. The workforce of tomorrow. We can do this, but we got to do it together. None of these borders anymore. It doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much. Mr. Griebel.
The key question for the city of Hartford, I now live in the city, I've been with this MetroHartford Alliance for the last 17 years, is how do we drive the mill rate down from 75 so we can attract private sector investment into this city. I believe the proposal by the state is absolutely the wrong way to go. It sets a horrific precedent for every other municipality who has similar issues to come forward and ask for similar support. We're just moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic by spreading the instead of having it be city taxpayers, it'll now be state taxpayers, but it will just drive up overall rates. I've submitted, when I was at the Alliance and now more recently to the Municipal Accountable Review Board, several ideas which include taking all the state-owned property here in the city, except for the Capitol and the LOB, and moving those to sale leaseback arrangements where all that property becomes back on the commercial tax rolls. I've recommended working with the hospitals and the higher eds to make a stronger sustained contribution to the tax rolls that are here. I recommended that we move the assessment ratio of homeowners steadily up from the current 35% up to the 70% where everyone else is. I recommended that we privatize as many city services as we can, trash collection among them. Consolidate both the IT and the public works departments of the school system and the city. There are ways that we can move the city forward without having to do the same old thing. You know, the definition of insanity, as we all know, is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's exactly what this proposal from the state is. We need to have comprehensive and structural reform in the city. It's things that a number of us have been fighting for the last decade. And I think the concept of what Aetna, the Travelers, and the Hartford did in terms of their commitment of the $50 million over 5 years is based on truly adopting and implementing comprehensive and sustainable reform along the lines that I just outlined. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take that one over there.
Ms. Byswitch.
cities need to be vibrant, and vibrant cities are the key to the future of our state. We've seen some of our largest employers who want to leave because they don't think there's enough talent here. So in addition to supporting our cities, we have to grow our economy, and I just wanted to share a couple of ideas for that. In order to grow our economy, we have to have a legislature and a governor that can work together so that budgets can be done on time. No company's going to want to come from out of state to Hartford or anywhere if we can't get the basic work of government done. So getting a budget done on time is a top priority, I believe. Also, we need to start investing in our infrastructure if we want to grow our economy in Connecticut. I am a strong supporter of tolls because U.S. News and World Report has just said that we are 41st in terms of infrastructure. If we want to create good jobs, let's use some of that revenue to invest in fixing our aging roads and bridges. That will create thousands of good jobs. I agree with Jonathan Harris that we should be supporting small businesses instead of giving huge corporations loans and huge tax incentives. And I also think that we have to create a pipeline from school to work. So our young people, when they graduate from community colleges or state colleges and universities, know they have a great job waiting for them. And one more simple but powerful idea to uplift every family economically in this state: pass pay equity so that women can make dollar for dollar what men make. And it's simple and easy to do. Ban employers from asking what you made at your last job, because that institutionalizes discrimination against women and people of color, and that would be a top priority for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Breiswitz. Jackie Wyatt?
I remember a year ago when I was talking to Luke about how they were going to get $50 million to make sure the city of Hartford is bailed out. Then they actually gave him 40. Now it's at $550 million. So the number is going to be something that we're going to need to realize, like the people that are involved in coming here tonight, do you know who you're electing to make your legislators come to Hartford? They are not listening to their communities if they are putting these type of deals together. As I just mentioned, if we gave $100 million to Bridgeport to fight the opioid, crime, gun violence, bring youth to better opportunities, that city will also have an opportunity. It takes money. And that's what we in the state need to look upon as us, as leaders, to bring new developments, ideas, and business back to the city. Hartford, build skyscrapers, bring businesses, fill the skyscrapers so they can tax and bring the money back to the city. Instead of looking upon, this is the way it is. I'm looking at it from where I am, the city of Stamford is not mentioned when we talk about these cities. When we talk about all the things that I live in Branford, Connecticut, and most people don't realize people in Branford don't go to Haven because of the crime. And it's the same from our outskirts here in Hartford. And that's just not the way it should be. But at the same time as Yale can reinvest almost $250 million just from their endowment fund into New Haven without asking from the state. So the people that we're electing and bringing to office, those are the people that I'm questioned during my election. We have a 30-minute movie video on me on how we can grow the economy and where we can change Connecticut out on our websites. Because I'm learning this from understanding the business economics that we need jobs and the things that are not being done come to the state. No company in the state of Connecticut should be getting $12 million to come to Hartford to create jobs, when that company should be investing that money in the city right now without the state having a kickback on it.
Thank you very much. You can just pass the microphone to Ms. Whittam. Thank you.
Whitnum.
Whitnum. Sorry.
I love the Smart Buy program. This was started by the governor of Maryland. The millennials are the largest population group the world has ever known. They make the baby boomers look small. They're the immigrants' kids and the baby boomers' kids. Here's the difference between the millennials and the baby boomers. They have no money. None. Baby boomers rode the GI Bill. They saw 100% increase of their property as time went on, over and over again. It's a different world for millennials. The Smart Buy program takes up to $30,000 of student loans, and if that millennial translates that into a down payment in an approved property and agrees to live there for 4 years, the state uses that $30,000 of student loan for the down payment. It's a chance at home ownership. We made the commitment for the budget for Hartford. We've got to keep it. We made a commitment. The legislators, if they're not paying attention, they can't go back now. It's in there. Let's put it to good use. We need our cities as flagships. We need them beautiful. Everybody concentrates on companies, bringing big companies in. Bringing big companies in. I say, bring the people in. Bring the young people in. Give somebody a chance at owning a 2-bedroom condo, beautifully renovated. Take some of that $500 million, give them a chance at home ownership. If they expand into a family, great, there's plenty of rooms. Kids, I call them kids, anyone 30 or younger, the millennials, the young people, they bring enthusiasm, energy. Not everybody is going to have a career in the corporate world. They bring bar restaurants, entertainment. They have to buy food. They bring everything that an influx of population that something like this would do and has succeeded in doing in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. You can put it right in the, thank you. As you have seen, we have a new candidate who has arrived. And so I'm going to read the question once more for Mark Stewart to give him a chance to answer this question. The state legislature recently passed a bill that will result in the state making $550 million in debt payments for the city of Hartford over 20 years. Do you support this plan? How would you respond to legislators who want to modify the plan to last just 2 years? And there's your microphone.
So thank you, and thank you all. I appreciate the time coming late. I apologize. I'm Mark Stewart, and I would like you to leave here with a distrust of government. It's a message that you'll hear from my campaign, which is called Stewart for Liberty. I'm a liberty-minded Democrat. I think Democrats, especially as a party, should get back to more of that, trusting individuals and groups which can do a better job. People up here, many have been in business. Many have been in alliances like Oz that don't rely only on government, but smaller groups to get things right. This $550 million, already Republicans want to welch on that. Ooh, we didn't know what was happening. And this is what's going to plague government processes over and over and over. Who loses? People who await government services, especially in Hartford. Hartford might or might not get $550. It might get a lot less. The wrangling would be so much better done with privatization of many, many things that individuals and groups, and you guys are part of them, do so much better. Look, we just found out how dopey the legislature is with the trains, which we had hoped to start next month. Doesn't look like they will. Why? We have to rent trains, cars from Massachusetts at an exorbitant rate, $4.5 million, when you can buy the whole fleet for $750,000. That's legislative groupthink that we should be getting away from. I'm a candidate for individuals over the legislature. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark Stewart. That's the conclusion of our first question. The second question is going to go to Guy Smith as our first responder. The Democrats and the Republicans have proposed different strategies to deal with Connecticut's transportation challenges. Who is right and why? What are the best features of each approach?
I'm not sure there are any best features of either approach. Transportation is like the weather, it affects us all. And it isn't happening in Connecticut any time of the day. We're not doing it right. There's $4.3 billion of transportation projects that are supposedly ready. And I learned the other day that there's a bridge down in Norwalk that the DOT wants to spend $1.1 billion on so they can do a railroad lift bridge. And on the other side of that bridge in the Norwalk River, there are 14 sailboats with high masts and a cement company that uses low barges. Why don't we just buy the 14 sailboats? This is stupid, and we're not doing it right. Tolls. We're the only state that doesn't do tolls from Virginia to Maine. Tolls annoy people. I'm not going to run a government that annoys people. But there's a way to do this so you don't have to pay a toll, and people from Massachusetts or Wyoming or New York do. Just give them a debit card, MasterCard or somebody like that. You pay the tolls all year long. Say you have $516 of tolls at the end of the year. That gets rolled up, put into the Department of Revenue Services in your tax file, and you get a $516 credit at the end of the year when you file your tax return. People from Massachusetts don't file tax returns here. It is legal. You got to jump through some hoops, but it is legal. I'm going to turn DOT upside down, and I don't mean the guys driving the snowplows. I mean the management. We have to do it differently, and we're not making decisions for you. We're making decisions for consultants. $1 billion for a bridge. They haven't even looked at alternatives.
Thank you very much for your approach. And Mr. Harris.
Transportation infrastructure is one of the keys to economic development. When I talked about West Hartford and what we were able to do from New Park Avenue through Bishop's Corner throughout our town, a lot of it was transportation infrastructure, improving roads, the grid system, moving traffic more efficiently, making sure that bikes could move, buses could move. It's one of the key things. Actually, I was opposed to the busway because I was in favor, again with Representative McCauley, I'll pick on him again here, that a commuter rail between Hartford and Waterbury connecting with Metro North actually was the way to go for way less money and way more bang for the buck. The minute you even talk about rail, whether it's light rail, whether it's commuter rail or high-speed rail, property values go up, economic development starts churning, jobs are created. We need to prioritize our bonding in the state to transportation because that's where you get the economic multiplier. That's where you get the bang for the buck. We also have to take a look at creating more public-private partnerships. Where can government partner with the private sector, not only for getting capital in, investment in, but also in operating certain pieces of our transportation system? And we also have to make sure that when we talk about transportation, of course, rail, I talked about that, high-speed rail connecting into New York, ultimately to Boston, a game changer for us to leverage those economic engines. But we need to also talk about things about moving ideas. Fiber optics. Why is it in certain parts of Hartford or in rural areas you don't have high-speed internet so that you can compete competitively? That is a transportation issue. That's something that's important to the cities, to our state. Finally, when it comes to transportation, we need to make sure that we don't only invest our money well, but that it can happen. It takes us way too long to get roads permitted, to get things to happen here. Some of this is, again, knowing where government needs to step out of the way to allow the private sector to work, to allow government to partner and to create value. It's not about losing protections. That is appropriate regulation. But there's no way that it should take months and months and years to get permits to build some of these things that we all need.
Thank you. Mr. Griebel.
Thanks, Carol. I had the privilege of chairing the Transportation Strategy Board from 2001 to 2005, and we were charged by the legislature at that time to come back within 1 year with a multimodal transportation strategy and to come up with the funding recommendations to support that strategy. We'd reinstitute it, Monty and I will reinstitute that on our first day in office because it builds that big tent I mentioned earlier. It brings private sector folks, we had 10 on the board, along with the commissioners of 5 key agencies, DOT, DECD, OPM, and the like. And by bringing both the private sector together along with those in charge of specific agencies affecting transportation, we did bring very good ideas to the forefront, including promoting the purchase of rail cars back at that time from Metro North. We've advocated for the institution of barge service to move the containers out of the Port Authority in New York and New Jersey by barge in New London, New Haven, and Bridgeport in order to relieve congestion on 95. The 95 and Metro North assets are two of our most important to make sure our lifeline into New York remains viable and that New York companies look at Connecticut and have an easy way to get here. On the funding side, we recommended the return of the 15 cents of the gasoline tax that had been taken out in 1999. We recommended a 10-year half-penny surcharge on the sales tax. We recommended the installation of electronic tolls, and we recommended the adoption of a constitutional lockbox to protect the funds that are identified. I believe in this, we have to, as already been said, the implementation of electronic tolls has to be done. It'll take 5 years to get there. In the short term, we're facing a crisis on municipal aid to municipal roads and bridges, and so the gasoline tax is going to have to be looked at. But I will not support any increase in funding until we, in November, pass the constitutional lockbox that will be on the ballot on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Stewart?
So could you please raise your hands if a number of days of the year you commute on a highway in Connecticut? How many people commute some days of the year on a highway? All right, so looking about 50-50. Guess what? You and the others in the room who have not raised their hands are now about to be enemies, fiscal enemies with the proposal for tolling, because everything that's come out of the legislature so far is tolls based on 4-lane highways and nothing else. So their proposal makes a fight inevitable, that commuters who have long trips are paying a lot, commuters who are on Route 4 or just on Route 5 and not Route 95 are paying very little. People on the bus pay nothing. There's an easier way. It's called mileage-based user fees. I believe in user fees. Pay for what you use. Oregon's doing this. Washington State and parts of California are close to doing this. I've given this proposal to 2 people in the legislature, one Democrat, one Republican. It hasn't gone anywhere. Again, I think the legislature has a systemic set of blinders. Such an easier way. Oz, it won't take 5 years. This way is about 4 months and a fraction of the setup cost to have an onboard device, most of your cars have that now, that registers where you go or how many miles you go and can bill by the mile. It can even bill by weight. So if it's heavy trucks, they'll pay more than SUVs, and little Yugos will pay even less. Motorcycles, less than that. Very fair. Nobody has animosity. Our legislature should be looking for solutions like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. J.C. Wyatt?
So a little bit of background again on me. I actually have 3 degrees from New York Institute of Technology. I'm an architect, interior decorator, and a landscape architect, and I build homes around the country. And understanding construction, there is so much waste in construction that you don't realize that a good architect and a good supervisor, we can control that. The state doesn't look at these projects the same way, and they should. Most of the legislators are going to pass some of the things that we aren't going to be able to reverse by the time one of us gets there in November. But we need to have a better solution. As I was going to school in New York City in 1989, I used to take Shoreline East, brand new service out of Branford to New Haven for the 2-hour trip to New York. Paid that actual fee, went up and up and up all the time along the way when I was in college, till eventually I lived in Manhattan. When you look at this transportation situation, where I'm going here is, we can wait for this lockbox. We can make sure we do exactly what needs to be put into the transportation. We have 2 bridges in Branford that were supposed to be done, complete, and start this summer are cut. They're one of the 4.3 million that are dangerous in our town, right in Branford where I'm from. So the state's now playing roulette wheel on all of us, and that's what's wrong. This is where somebody as an architect, a builder, a developer from my mindset understands to come to these and be part of this event, is because we need somebody to look at these construction situations. So bringing in a transportation, the tolls of the transportation to make this money come in, I think it's about 800 million. I don't feel that in today's society, Connecticut people are just fed up with paying taxes. We're so used to paying them. We don't know what it's like for us to take one away. There is so much that we can take away, but that's in this point of this transportation situation. We need to protect our state. We need to build it and not be able to have, a train service that I can't come up from Branford to Hartford that I got to wait to June. And in Branford, we have to take buses because we don't have enough cars down in Branford for us to get to New Haven either. So the state of Connecticut should be ashamed of what they're doing to the people that pay their taxes and take the transportation in the state.
Thank you. Ms. Whitnam?
Until we get rid of our unfunded pension obligations, then we can start making life better for everyone. But we made that obligation, pension plans have changed, and we will meet that obligation. I'm flabbergasted when I was at the DOT and they talk about building a toll at the border being 6 years. This is insane. This is not a brick and mortar toll with a big building like the traditional toll booth. These are, you've driven through them yourself, big sort of Wesh-Meyer things, and the cost of it. It reminds me of the Harvard Gatehouse story. When I was at Harvard, you hear all these stories about Harvard University. It's an only in Harvard experience. Well, there was the Harvard Gatehouse. In 1955, Harvard wanted a gatehouse by the main gate, a little tiny gate this big for some poor guy to stand in, or girl, when it's bad weather, just to be at the gate. Well, when the architect heard it was Harvard, he upped the price. When the construction people heard it was Harvard, they upped the price. The Harvard Gatehouse in 1955 wound up costing $60,000, which was probably 3 times the price as your average suburban home. It was outrageous. I think we're suffering from a little bit of that here. I've heard the argument from some of these crews, and they say, well, if we have to be competitive here or else other states will take our people. We have indeed right now. I'm a big, big union supporter, and I've been a union member for more than 20 years at this point. My mother was a union member, and my grandmother was a union member for 35 years. The union was huge in my family. And I believe in the union, but what I don't believe in is cronyism. And when I hear, it's going to take 6 years to install this toll, why? The infrastructure is not that complicated and difficult. Outsource the actual billing and payment to another state who has it down until we get up to speed. I don't believe the numbers. I think there's a little too much cronyism going on, and I'd investigate that.
Thank you very much. So the next segment of our program is to allow you to ask questions, and you will. We have our microphones ready to travel around the room.
Hello, I'm J. Stan McCauley, and I'm exploring a run for mayor of the city of Hartford in the 2019 election. It's undeniable that Hartford has many challenges. However, I believe that our residents are our strength. The question is, do you believe, like I do, in the potential of Hartford? You see the many assets the city has, but do you wonder, as I do, why we are still struggling to move ahead? Do you wonder why the solutions being offered to us just don't seem to get the job done? Well, creating a vibrant city begins with you. We have incredible people who live in the city, who have great solutions to Hartford's biggest challenges. But you don't always have a platform to have your ideas heard, let alone given an opportunity to co-create solutions that work for you, that work for us, that work for Hartford. Hartford's journey will be bumpy, and we'll continue to face highs and lows that challenge us to work smarter and come together as a community that is willing to capitalize on the power of our collective diversity of thought. The challenges facing Hartford will require each of us to act, whether in small ways or big ones. If you're with us on this journey, give me a call at 860-944-9797 and host a listening event for me. Invite a few of your friends so we can explore the possibilities together for a better Hartford.
We have our microphones ready to travel around the room. Are they ready? We have two people, okay. So just raise your hand and our speakers, our microphone holders will come around to you and allow you to ask a question. We have a couple down here in front on this side. Thank you, Denise. This gentleman in the third row. And then behind him, the next question.
Hi. Our debt and deficit situation is out of control. Where do you see opportunities to scale back the scope and scale of government so we can get back on track?
Okay, this question goes to Jonathan Harris first.
An excellent question. Before I answer it, I just want to apologize. I wanted to be here and I freed up this hour, but I do have to take off. I'll leave some cards in the back. People want to follow up with me, then I'd love to hear from you. So we actually faced a fiscal crisis in West Hartford in 2001 when I was mayor. The Republicans had never wanted to raise taxes even smoothly, spent on our fund balance, didn't pay retiree health care, did a bunch of things that didn't work. Recession hits in 2001. We said, what are our values? Education, senior services, front yard services. We literally mapped out our government, took a look at where there were redundancies on the board side and the town side, and combined services. We did this by bringing people together, workers, management, business, civic groups. We all got together and figured out how we could reinvent our government. By the way, not only at that time did we make our pension payments for the first time in a while because we had to. We were all of a sudden not fully funded. We did that. We built a third middle school, and we're the first municipality in the state to have public pre-kindergarten, realizing that that investment is important. So this can be done. I took those lessons to the state level, because of course people will say the municipal government is simpler. It's a little bit, fewer pieces to it. But in consumer protection, down 25% of our people, given more to do, whether it was the cutting-edge medical marijuana program, providing veterans with PTSD, people suffering from cancer, kids seizing every day with another viable healthcare choice, or important activities to combat the opioid epidemic, we again brought people together and said, what's our mission? Protecting public health and safety, preventing economic harm to consumers and businesses. If it doesn't, in a meaningful and measurable way, go to one or both of those things, we're not going to do it. We got rid of stuff in our discretion. We took a look at our regs, went to the legislature and got rid of things. That can help. That, plus the big stone around our neck, the pension debt. We have $18 billion of hard assets in the state, land undervalued, income streams. We can redirect some of that to lower the pension to get our arms around the deficit.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. This is supposed to be the part of the program where our clocks are set to 1 minute. So,
and that question can easily be done in 30 seconds.
Right,
so
right,
let me put 3 points on the table, and I'll be happy to come back. Exactly. I'll be happy to expand on this, but let me put 3 points on the table. When I talk to folks who are currently receiving a pension from the state, I ask you, you're getting your check today, question, do you think you're going to get it in 20 years? And the answer is, of course I'm going to get it, I'm entitled to it. And I ask, well, you can't ignore Detroit, you can't ignore Puerto Rico, you can't ignore Central Falls, Rhode Island. We've had no net job growth in this state in 30 years. If we don't get job growth, we're not going to generate the income that's going to allow us to honor those obligations. So two things I would say is we bring the CBAC agreement back in 2020 for discussions with the unions as we negotiate the work rules and base compensation for those groups. I would advocate contributing something like the state lottery to the state teachers pension fund, securitizing all state-owned assets and contributing those to the state employee fund in exchange for changes in work rules that would allow us, to Bill's question, to privatize certain services that are now done by state employees. Things like DMV, certain services that are provided to those in need that can be done more effectively by current not-for-profit organizations. So in 60 seconds, that at least, I hope, whets your appetite, and I'd be happy to talk more about it.
Thank you very much. Mark Stewart?
Thank you. Your question invoked a beautiful word that's rarely heard in Democrat caucuses and never heard in Hartford: downsize. It needs to be at least on the table. And one way that there can still be revenue with a Governor Stewart who would cut income taxes for the personal, would cut corporate income taxes, and would not raise the sales tax, I would tax online sales. Okay? Even if the Supreme Court doesn't yet rule firmly against, it's time we do get revenue. It protects brick and mortar stores that are doing business here. For gosh sakes, an extra 3% when online stuff is so cheap is a no-brainer. We should do that to shore up the revenue. As far as protecting teachers, who are the most in jeopardy because Republicans would like to put them into municipalities which could go bankrupt, I would protect not only the letter of the contract, but the spirit of a contract. They gave up before, they shouldn't be asked to give up later.
Thank you very much. J.C. White?
Great question. The reason why it's a great question is back in January, before I actually filed, I looked for the state budget and I asked for all our spending right after Christmas in January. And I looked at that and I went, oh my God. I've never seen a business in the plan and how our state does what it does. It's how come in March I filed to run here to help us fix this. People are going to talk about, and Oz has great things on the transportation, and you know, we talk about a lot of things that we can do to make the state better. That's great. But what are we going to do to cut? 1.7 billion in fringe benefits out of that capital. 3.7 billion to welfare in the state of Connecticut. 3 billion to UConn. These are the things that the state doesn't realize, and putting $12 million in the state to one company to come to Hartford. These are the spending that Malloy is doing, and I've been against the regulations of what he's doing. This is not the way we need to operate our state. The spending can be fixed. We should not be doing on the same with the trains a minute ago. This stuff should be purchased correctly and done correctly so we actually utilize what we're doing correctly with our money.
Thank you. Lee Whitnam?
This is that sovereign immunity question again. I have 15 bills to clean up the state of Connecticut, but one of them is change the directive of the Judicial Review Council, because right now judges are rubber stamped in every 8 years. They get a job for life, even if they keep you coming back, take your kids from you, unlawfully put you in jail, or violate your due process. There's no one getting fired in the judicial branch. They have a $1.2 billion budget. The Judicial Review Council, to change their directive like I have in Lee Bill number 1, it makes it rolling, not every 8 years, all the time. 3 strikes for impeachment, toward impeachment, and there's an automatic hearing, and that person, state employee and judge, thank you for your service, but goodbye, and there is no appeal. The problem in the state of Connecticut, I've said it all along, is everybody gets fatter and fatter and fatter. Any accountant can balance a budget. How do you get rid of the fat if you don't have mechanisms in place to fire people? There's way too many people that need to be fired.
Thank you. And Mr. Ganem.
I'm as, the note of frustration in the question is the same one I share. It's outrageous that we should sit here at least 2 years in a row after feeling state government was balanced, and then 2 years in a row we're off by $2 billion on revenues and expenditures. There's got to be a reliable system whereby we're able to analyze and understand what our expenditures are going to be and what's reliable as far as revenues for state level. When I took over the state's largest city, Bridgeport, it was literally bankrupt. A projected budget deficit is probably proportionally in excess of where we are at a state level. In a minute, you're not going to answer this, but I can tell you this. It was an approach of getting people around the table, labor and management, business and government, grassroots, profits and nonprofits, and focus from leadership in a general direction. Was able to pull the city out of bankruptcy, balance the next 10 budgets in a row without raising taxes, and be able to begin confidence in our downtown and our city at that time that spurred economic development and job growth. And at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be. We're going to get out of it. We're going to move forward with a better vision for Connecticut, a change as the way we do business, and then grow our economy. We're not going to cut our way out of it. We're not going to tax our way out of it. Neither of those will suffice some of the challenges and needs that we have, short term or long term.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
The way to make government smaller is to make Connecticut larger. More jobs, more in our economy, not just cut, destroy. It's what all the Republicans want to do. It's their only solution. Look at what they're doing to this state. Taking away insurance from little kids, taking away home eating assistance from our most vulnerable citizens. What's the matter with these people? The only way to do this is to grow our way out of it, not tax our way out of it. So many of my colleagues, not that one, but these colleagues, want to raise your taxes. Tolls are a tax. $800 million they'll collect. Yeah, $800 million of your dollars. We don't need to do it that way. We need to reverse the outflow of people leaving the state, recruit people into the state, and grow. This is a state where it works. People get up and go to work. Our state workers do what, the roads get plowed. These are the kind of things that we're not looking at. It's always just tax and cut, tax and kill teachers. That's not how I'm going to do it. We're going to grow.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, the next question.
Hi.
Where is the question coming from?
Right back here. Oh, you over there?
We had called on this person as the second, so whoever, you'll be next. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Jennings, and I'm on Hartford City Council. And I have not heard anything about how any of you gubernatorial candidates will address the gross disparities that are based on race and gender in this state. I will just deal with one issue, and that is that Connecticut spends more than $1.5 billion a year to incarcerate more than 14,000 individuals every year in Connecticut. The prison population in Connecticut is 71% African American and Latino. African Americans and Latinos are being incarcerated based on their race. Connecticut taxpayers are paying a huge bill, which is about equal to the deficit of $1.5 billion every year to incarcerate unjustly people of color in this state. I'd like someone to address the fact that what are you going to do about these disparities? Because so many of you have not a clue about what's happening in the urban centers and how to address the disparities. No one has talked about them, and therefore I do not think that that huge cost to Connecticut taxpayers is going to be resolved.
Thank you. Mr. Reber.
Another easy one in 60 seconds. First of all, I'd say what Governor Malloy and the legislature have done in the Second Chance Society is a small step in the right direction. Some services that are provided, things like the Chrysalis Center and whatnot, I think need to continue to be supported, Cynthia. But at the heart of all this, it is about providing more job opportunity. If we don't have jobs for those coming out of prison, if we don't have jobs for those coming out of the high school system, if we don't have a school system that educates people to be ready for those jobs, some of these problems are going to go on in perpetuity. So to me, it is about reigniting private sector confidence in the city and in the state, that this is a place where we want to keep jobs, where the next job is going to come, and that there be much more interaction between leaders in the cities and in organizations of city councils and organizations that represent individuals whom you're referencing, Cynthia. But at the end of the day, we have to have a vibrant economy that is going to provide the jobs that are there and the tax revenues to support the kind of training that's going to be needed.
Thank you. Mark Stewart.
Ms. Jennings, My answer is more freedom, and it means less incarceration for drug offenses. We have a ridiculous system of laws that put people away, and it is disproportionately African American people that are being put away for nonviolent offenses. Sales peacefully to a willing buyer of something that gets you high but doesn't cause any damage should be permitted. That's what liberty is about. And those incarcerations will go down dramatically because I, if governor, would appoint a parole board that will pardon people for non-violent drug offenses. If the General Assembly doesn't get it together during my first year, there will be inmate after inmate let out if they are not a risk to society going forward. One other thing, Sheff versus O'Neill is an absolutely racist result. Good intentions, but the result is good Hartford kids, because of their race, are not allowed to go to good schools. I have a solution for that. I can talk to you afterwards.
Thank you. J.C. Wyatt, please.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to start with this part of it. I'm the first transgender woman ever to run for governor. I know LGBTQ situation. I know where we can go and how we can change things from a point of being in a minority. Within myself, I can't be in our military. Our president doesn't allow it, but I can run for office and listen to you. That's where we need to make these solutions. Come to our groups in the cities and find out what we can do for you. That's what's not being asked. So we can bring solutions, build, and I'm a businesswoman for 22 years. It's not about my money. It's about you, the people that are struggling, and we need to fix that. So my answer first would be, I would want you in that meeting to tell me exactly everything that you would want us to do, because that's where it starts. It's the people that are enforced and inside our cities. Just in Bridgeport, they're gonna have a best message. We have it in Branford. And the same things happen all over. And this isn't about making people be separated. We need to become one, unite, and it's not about who we are, it's about what we can do for each other and make life better for all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Whitnam.
I was dragged into criminal court for 41 court appearances by John Whale, an assistant chief state's prosecutor, for a crime I've always claimed he and Judge Jane Emmons orchestrated. And I've been embroiled in legal battles trying to get justice for what happened to me and my husband for 6 years now. Not everyone who is victim of the system is a minority, but most of the time they are. In my case, I was politically undesirable because I was not pro-Israel, and I got myself, I do not believe in the US funding of Israel, but I'm not anti-Semitic, but I made some very powerful people angry. There is nothing worse. I truly believed I was going to jail for 14 years for a crime I did not commit. They took my husband from me, and I paced literally for 3 years before it all went away. I would never turn a blind ear after what I went through. Why can't I get justice from the Chief State's Prosecutor's Office? Why was I a first-time offender, and why was this prosecutor brought down? Why wasn't I on the local docket with the local folk? This sort of predatory prosecutorial behavior, we got rid of the sheriff's department, and then we got rid of the grand jury. He can run amok with impunity. I'm putting back the grand jury, and I'm going to put back the sheriff's department, and I'm going to call him on the carpet. I've been trying. I've been down at Second Circuit Appellate. At the federal court, I can't get justice against a prosecutor run amok. We need to change that for all of us.
Thank you.
Mr. Ganem.
Thank you. And Cynthia, thank you for being the champion, really, of the disproportionate incarceration of people of color, especially young African American men who grew up in our cities. Part of it is a failed criminal justice system, in my view. Part of it is the way that we failed as a society to recognize the urban environment, the lack of opportunity, job creation, and how we can support all of our children, all of our young people, people of color, white, black, Latino. And I'm not thrilled, frankly, with the second chance initiatives that have been put forth in the state of Connecticut. I think they fall far short of the needs or recognizing the true needs of reentry. When you see 1,000 people, returning citizens coming into Hartford, 1,000 in Bridgeport, New Haven, I'm sure Waterbury as well, looking for just basic support in order to get back on their feet, in order to maybe provide for their families or get a job or housing that they can afford. We need to go a lot further than we do. We put an initiative in Bridgeport, a mayor's initiative for reentry. We've tried our best, I think, to provide better opportunities. We need to do more as a state. I'll do that as governor. I think we need to do that more as a society. And again, thank you for being that voice as you were again today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
You are so right. There are too many people of color in prison that shouldn't be there. Just take marijuana. You know the statistics better than I do. I think this privately owned prison thing's a really bad idea. I think we need to be serious about prison reform and continue what has been done. Some pretty good stuff, needs to be more. There's an important component, this is a specific, the educational element of prison reform. Somebody's coming out, they know a year ahead of time, they're coming out. They're not being trained for a job that's available in the community they're coming back to. They come back, no job, 3 days, back on the street, and you start the cycle again. We have to be serious about, and I asked people, I said, why don't we just change what we're doing in the prison education system? That couldn't be controversial. Oh, yeah, well, we can't do that. Well, let me tell you, when I'm governor, we're going to do that. We don't need a law to do that. You just need leadership. That's what I'm talking about when I say different and better. You are so right about what you said. We're going to change it. My administration will look like all of us, not just like me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Oh.
And then over here after. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the issue. Well, no one's mentioned this. Last year, 1,000 people died from opioid overdoses and related. I think almost 400 people died of other drug overdoses. This is a national crisis. I haven't heard anybody talk about this as a priority or a strategy. Could you comment?
Okay.
I can talk about it in two ways. It is my turn? Okay. I can talk about it in two ways. Some of the opioid problems are the street dealings, and these would almost evaporate if you legalized drugs. If you legalized more drugs, first off, people who could come to the rescue of somebody who had OD'd, right now, they're afraid to report it. Because he was partying with me, I now might be in jail. That leads some people to die of overdoses. On the other front, there are a lot of doctors that are overprescribing, and that's because big companies find profit in oxycodone and other opioids that are just routinely used as a mild painkiller, and it gets people hooked. We can do better than having that system of pharma abuse.
Thank you. Ms. White?
In our website, there's 42 issues that we have listed in Governor Wyatt, and this one was important because we realized that it hits home to a lot of people, no matter what background you're from and where you live in the States. So to me, when I looked upon it as what's the best for us to do, we need to look at the pharmacy, we need to look at the doctors, we need to look at the actual company making the medication and find out what is going to do the solution. And that's where you reach out, as I mentioned to Cynthia a minute ago, getting the people involved that makes these decisions with us. We can come up with the best plans when you get the people involved that are in part entrenched in this to make those solutions. And that's where I'm seeing from this is it's just as much as we could put money into the cities to bring people to opportunities. We talked about a minute with the jobs, and I just want to jump in there. I would love to see constructional jobs. And instead of someone who's 14-year-old that needs to steal a car in the city of Hartford, and they do it all over the state, to have an opportunity to be inside doing construction jobs. We do need demolition, and this is point when you start bringing an opportunity that hasn't been there before. And bringing it back to on the drug situation is we together as a group, and again as a state, and the people involved, and I've talked to the moms in situations in this, even in a wealthy town where I'm from, this hits home and they want solutions, and that's what someone as our leadership we need to do with the group and the community.
Ms. Whittam.
I recently lost a friend from a fentanyl overdose. He had been a long-term heroin user. He fought very, very hard. He was so gentle. And his mother and I used to always talk about how is it that this guy. He was a man when he passed away just this year, 45. How is it possible that someone who sees the world as it should be and it is so gentle in the world, then because of the drugs, because he can't handle the way the world is, they put him into an even worse world because he did plenty of time because of the drugs. Completely decriminalize the drugs. It's as though you're punishing the people on who are having the hardest time coping. Life is hard. Life is hard. You know, I wish all our kids have a beer, not the whole six-pack, take the edge off, but don't do anything stronger than that. You know, we are 5% of the world's population, and yet we have 20% of the inmates, and so many of them are drug-related. Completely decriminalize the drugs, unless, of course, they're dealing drugs, but that's different. But drug use, these people should not be going to jail.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ganem.
Yes, thank you. You're exactly right that this is one of the fastest growing epidemics, turning just hardworking individuals, possibly with an overprescription, into potentially a bad term, criminals, and ruining lives, ruining families. Some of it is the greed and the collusion between doctors and pharmaceutical companies. I think that's been uncovered more recently. As a mayor, our city has got behind and joined lawsuits. Not always quick to do this, but joined lawsuits with the city of Waterbury and others in order to kind of right this wrong to a certain extent. And if there's funding that comes out of that, in other words, if there's an award, it'll go into support for treatment for individuals who have been directly or indirectly the victims of the overprescription and the collusion between large pharmaceutical companies that think they can just push their way around and have their way with doctors and then ultimately create, as we've talked about, victims and then ultimately ruin people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I certainly support the litigation against the big corporations that, if you believe even half of what you read in the media about it, it's some bad stuff. Let me give you a specific. We could talk about this for, 2 hours on this subject. Marijuana. I am in favor of recreational marijuana, and we can talk about that later, but I want to talk about, to your point, about medical marijuana. We have it in this state. It's not easy enough to get access to it. I have had a personal experience with a close friend who had some serious surgery, prescribed opioids. He was terrified of them. His doctor was skittish about them. And in addition to that, they weren't working on his pain relief. He got a prescription for medical marijuana, was in serious pain. The regular painkillers weren't helping him, and it took 13 days to get access to the medical marijuana. We need to change these kinds of things, because now this guy was smart enough to know, don't overdo this. And he had doctors saying, no, don't do that. We've got too many doctors prescribing stuff to people who aren't as educated as they should be and informed as they should be, and they take too many and they get addicted.
Thank you.
Well, medical marijuana is one, not all, but one solution to that when we free it up and make it a little easier for people to get access to it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Griebel.
Thank you. My running mate, Monty Frank, is the president of the Connecticut Bar Association, and one of the things that they have done is try to pull together the 18 or 20 various groups in the state that are trying to deal with the opioid crisis, and that's something we would try to do. We've got multiple parties trying to do all good work, but not necessarily leveraging the intellectual or financial resources effectively. So that's one thing we would do. Secondly, it appears that recreational marijuana is going to come to this state at some point. I have real concerns about how it's regulated, some of the things we can talk about, and if that's a topic of interest. But clearly, the tax revenues that would come out of that cannot go into the general fund. They have to be dedicated, allocated to mental health and substance abuse support. It's got to be a key revenue source, and that's one thing to do. It doesn't solve the problem, but I think in a more collective way, properly funded, we have a better chance at it.
Thank you very much. And I think we're ready for the next question, and down here, and we will have time for one more question. This gentleman back right in the middle here. Okay. Oh, sorry, over here. Sorry, I missed that one over here. No, it's this person right here.
Let's
is
go ahead and
next.
take care of mine,
And then you will follow, and if the audience wants to stay, this gentleman.
Okay, this is the same topic, but I'd like a quick poll. It'll only take 10 seconds. Yes, no. Do you support legalization of recreational use of marijuana?
Just raise your hand. Yes?
Yes.
No? Recreational marijuana. Okay. And one no. Okay. One no or just two? One? Okay. All right, young lady.
Hi. I actually have a question of my own, but I noticed that Joe didn't get to answer the question on transportation. So I do think he should be allowed to do that. But my question is basically about inclusion and diversity. I spent a lot of time up at the Legislative Office Building doing political work for various entities, and really struggling with leadership. The diversity up there, it's horrible. And so I want to know, when you get into office, what are you going to do? And so with the women, I'm not worried about it, but I want to know what you're going to do to make sure that there are people, women, people who are like me, Latinos, just diversifying our leadership up there at the Capitol.
So your question is, you want to know what their leadership...
I want to know what they're going to do as leaders
to help you
increase diversity in leadership up at the Capitol.
Okay, and this actually goes first to Ms. Wyatt.
Great part of this. I've been to the Capitol many times on tours, and I could tell you I've walked around there, and I can't believe the way we're operating. It's terrible, the way we're operating up there. It's not right, and it's wrong in the way this thing. So as a leader in a business, how I've been all my life, it's just like taking over as a CEO. We're going to take everybody in an interview, we're going to find out what they're doing, and if they don't lie, if I don't see them as working, they will be moved to somewhere else, because the people that there have exactly the background of understanding what is happening in that Capitol. And that's where you guys need the opportunity to grow and to aspire and find the opportunities of all of us that can be opportunity. There's 3 women running actually in this race, and it's like 5 to 20 of us all, and this is where today's society doesn't make sense. Today, this Capitol should be embarrassing, and as I said before, the way it's operating in our state people. I agree with you, where they will all be reviewed, and if I don't like and see after we do the reviews, they will be moved.
Thank you. Ms. Whitnam?
The answer is the same for judges and for employees at the Capitol, not your legislators, because people elect them. It's who runs. If you have 187 judges in a courthouse or in the state, if you can never get rid of a bad one who violates due process, is taking money on the side, won't answer motion for clarification, makes unbelievably bad rulings, is constantly having appeals, just a bad judge, you can't get rid of them. Imagine if you file a complaint at the JRC for a state employee or a bad judge, and it's actually listened to. 3 strikes, an automatic hearing, sorry, bye, thank you for your service, you're fired. And we get somebody else in there, and we start rolling through the bad employees in this state, and you're empowered because I complained about that person, somebody else did too, and we got rid of them. Not the same bad employees who never ever leave, who play games, they're dishonest, they're on the take, they're throwing cases, they're denying due process. This is the problem, people's quality of life. My time's up.
Thank you. Mr. Ganem.
Thank you. You want to hold the transportation question that I missed for later? Let me just touch on the diversity question, and I do believe our state government, and I believe I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to run as a Democrat, and I think the Democratic ticket, which holds the constitutional office in it, and I hope and I pray that when we come out as a Democratic Party, that we have a ticket that reflects Connecticut. It's not all white, it's not all male, that it's African American, that it's Latino, that it has women on it, and anybody who thinks that they can would like an opportunity to serve, they should have a place, I think, not just in government, but certainly in the process as a member of the Democratic Party to run for a constitutional office. I have a cabinet as mayor of the city of Bridgeport, which has a CAO, chief administrative officer, happens to be an African-American woman. Deputy happens to be African-American man. Chief of police, who happens to be Latino man. Health director happens to be Latino woman. A director of labor relations happens to be African-American woman. Director of OPM. And so I have and they are the type of team that has come together and given me the latitude to be out here this evening because they helped me run the city and move it forward. So I'm proud of the administration I've been able to put together. I hope that the next state government, with me as governor, is as reflective as I've tried to make the one that I serve in the city of Bridgeport. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll call you back for that transportation after this cycle. Thank you for reminding us of that. I missed my check mark. Mr. Smith.
As I said a few minutes ago, my administration will look like all of us. I deeply believe in that. We need to do that in order to serve the citizens of this state properly. You may have read recently that I said that I was going to do petitions and not go for the party convention nomination. I said it was rigged. It isn't just rigged against me because I'm a newcomer and not a career politician. There's this thing called the Rules Committee. It sets the rules for the convention in secret. There's one person of color on that committee, and Democrats make up 25% of the Democratic Party in the state of Connecticut. They have to change. We're going to change. My administration is going to look like all of us. Remember what I said about Andrew McDonald? If his nomination fails, I will renominate him as soon as I'm governor. First gay man as Chief Justice. Why did they vote it down? Because the man was gay. Well, they're not going to do it that way. It's going to be different and better in a Smith administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griebel.
Just quickly, we're clearly becoming a minority-majority state, the way the rest of the country is, so it's not only the right thing to do, but it's the practical thing to do. I've said we're running today to win on November 6th. Starting on November 7th is when the campaign begins to institute some of the structural changes that I've referenced in my prior answers. In order to get those structural changes implemented, we're going to need to keep you all engaged in the process because some of the things we're talking about are not going to be welcomed by the legislature. So the idea of keeping you engaged and therefore making sure that all the constituents in this state are engaged is going to be absolutely critical to not only doing the right thing, but also to moving the state forward along the lines that I've outlined. So I fully appreciate the question, and it's something that both has the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, but it also has very practical implications to getting this state back on its feet economically.
Thank you.
I do have a thumb on the scale that favorably helps African Americans. But it's not because of their skin color. It's because the people that I would appoint, and I have many right now, high percentage are black, because they have guts, because they have passion, assiduousness, good ability to voice issues as you have here. And I hope that the skin color, which should be the least relevant thing, doesn't matter. Blacks and Latinos will elevate themselves well. I will help, but I will do it based on merit. I'm not going to do it based on I need an equality across the spectrum. Equality of condition can't be confused with equality of opportunity. We all want opportunity to be equal, but that means inherently you're not going to have equality of result, and that's a better result.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Ganem, if you would like to address the transportation issue, if you can do it in less than 2 minutes, that would be wonderful. And we have one question from the gentleman over here,
Yes,
if he'll be ready to go, and that gives everyone a chance to have the question first. Okay.
Well, that's great. I'll be brief, but it is one of the biggest challenges and focuses that I'll bring as governor to Connecticut. We want to create jobs. Two, we have and have had in the past a failing or failed transportation system. Just think back, if you're as old as me, when the bridge fell in Greenwich. We're almost at that point now, where we've neglected even the bare maintenance of investment and reinvestment into our infrastructure systems. Never mind the investments we need to improve it, so that we're not stuck in traffic either trying to get into Hartford as I was tonight, or trying to get out of Hartford, or Bridgeport, or on I-95 if you live in my neck of the woods, anytime between 6:15 a.m. in the morning and 9 o'clock if you're going southbound towards Greenwich and New York, all the way from New Haven, and vice versa, starting at 3:30 going back. It's a parking lot. We need to invest more in rail, public transportation, even in our inner cities. When they talk about the transportation fund being broke, that's impacting bus service in our cities. for people who have the greatest need. They're talking about a 30 or 40% cut or increase in fares for people who have the least ability to pay, who rely on a bus to get to the doctor's office, many to go to work, or just to get around the base. So this is a real challenge for us as a state. We need to fund the transportation fund one way or another. We need to fix that and fix the state budget as well. And this can be, I think, part of the way we redevelop, I should say, move our state forward with job creation and spur the economy. Tie our cities with a better transportation system. We have a new and better state.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And our last question goes first to Ms. Whitnam.
Thank you. My name is Dermot Brown. I came a little late, but I have two simple questions to ask. And the first one is, the state of Connecticut is great, has been doing good, but we have had governors who have been doing their best. What can any of you do that's different to what's happening now for the state of Connecticut than any of those at least two governors have done? What can you do? And the second question is, Washington, D.C. is quite a challenge. There's so many things going on there. And specifically, what connections will you have to help Connecticut get a part of the pie in Washington, D.C.? That's my question.
Thank you. And we'll start here and try to be very specific.
As you know, I've been aggrieved by the judiciary and treated unbelievably horribly, due process denied by at least 5 different judges. I've stood before in the judicial system absolutely flabbergasted that my stated rights, things like the ability to have a lawyer if you can't afford it. Judge says no. What do you mean? That's my right. Well, ability to have a fair and speedy trial. After 1 year, you file a motion for speedy trial. You say, but it's in statute here. You're supposed to drop the charges. Oh, well. The ability to get due process. The evidence to prove your innocence. The ability to have a motion to dismiss heard with your evidence. Denied. 6 motions. Year after year, because that would defeat the purpose of allowing Assistant Chief State's Prosecutor Whalen from using the court system to torture me. There's no enforcement in this state of the highest levels of power. The grand jury is 24 people. You know why we eliminated the grand jury in 1984? Because they said our state is so small, you can't find 24 non-biased people. I can find 24 non-biased people in my local ShopRite. That's nonsense. We need to call these people on, including the governor. I called on the governor, help me. Help get this dog off my back, and he didn't lift a finger to help me.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney.
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. Ganem.
Since this is our last word, let me say thank you again for having us for this forum and everyone for staying. How do you do it different? My approach is completely different. It's based on my background and experience. 14 years running the state's largest city, taking it from bankruptcy to fiscal solvency, creating jobs, getting companies come in from New York now into Connecticut, into Bridgeport specifically, and investing hundreds of millions of dollars in creating a new skyline and a new waterfront and entertainment downtown. It's a focus, it's an approach that is bringing people together and working, if need be, across the aisle, as I've done in the past, with people that are usually across the table, to get them to work around the table with a vision and a focus that says we're in this together. We need to build together. It will be a diverse administration, one that reflects and recognizes the beautiful mosaic that comprises most of our cities. And the elements of our cities, as I said, the engines that should be a part of driving a new and better Connecticut economy that creates jobs, that recognizes cities as cultural centers, places for education, and places that can be the bright lights that I think that we pride ourselves in a new Connecticut. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here.
All right. Mr. Smith.
Question 1. People in this state, in this government, talk past each other. We have to talk to each other. We have to talk with each other. I will do that. When I worked at the White House for President Clinton, impeachment was going on. Newt Gingrich, the Speaker of the House, a Republican, spent all day during the day trying to kneecap him, quite literally. But at night, we invited him to the White House. We went down to the bowling alley, we got pizza and beer, and we worked on legislation that helped people. That was hard. I know how to do hard. Question 2. I will create an office in the Office of Economic Development whose sole responsibility is to help any entity in the state of Connecticut get more federal money. Right now, we're a giver state. Every dollar of federal tax money you send to Washington, 80 cents comes back. If you live in Alabama or Tennessee, $1.32 comes back. We're going to flip that. We're going to become a taker state. And everybody in this state, we're going to help, whether it's an educational institution or EB, get another nuclear submarine to build, or a daycare center. I hear what you're saying. I know what I'm doing about this, and we're going to do it. And as I said, different and better.
Thank you. Mr. Griebel.
I'd be happy, George, to stay after this and go over all the things I talked about earlier in this conversation. I won't try to repeat all of that. Would encourage any of you who are interested in knowing more in detail about what the Griebel Frank campaign is about. Leave Kyle your card. Put your email address. You can be invited to town halls and have a much more in-depth conversation than this particular framework allows us. Would welcome you, as I said earlier. Anybody who would be helpful to help us get it on the ballot. The petitions are out there. Look forward to seeing you at other forums that we'll be putting on in the weeks and months ahead, and certainly want to thank the coalition for the opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Mark Stewart.
Sure. So this is my website, and if you can't stay late, I too am happy to be here for a half hour. I do conference calls every Friday at 5 o'clock, stewartforliberty.com. But to address your DC questions first, sir, I would like to have a partnership with, though he's odious, the man who occupies the White House. And why do I think it'll work? Because Mr. Trump likes to do deals. We can make deals. We could make deals that help Connecticut on transportation. We can make deals that help Connecticut on immigration. We can make deals that help Connecticut on education. That's my passion, and I know there's another odious name, especially east of the river in East Hartford. Her name's Betsy DeVos, but she could help us get a better schooling system. As far as what the other governors didn't do, we've had a mediocre Malloy and 3 horrible predecessors, Rel, Rowland, Weicker. And one thing they didn't do was respect that business should be supreme. I would be bringing back the Whalers. I'm working on it now, so it doesn't have to wait till 2019. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you again for everybody for coming and listening. So, that's great. Guess what's going to be new? There'll be a new woman governor that can see things differently, look at things differently, be genuine, real to the people, and bring the opportunities. As I mentioned many times in this economical world that we need to change, we could put 15,000 hotel rooms in the state, and the state can make $100 million. And that's the differences of looking on, we take our lands and our developments of how to build the state. I have already inside, we have $1 billion airport down in Haven that can bring the generations back, change travel infrastructure. So we have somebody new that's different than any of them before, and that's somebody like me. But also the second point about Washington. Trump likes winners. So if whoever's going to win is going to understand that having an anti-Trump message needs to be calmed, that is where you're going to be able to get back, to get our Congress to come back, to bring the valuable resources and federal money to the state. But at the same time, we got to be true and genuine to each other, and that's what a new governor needs to be in the state, to market this state and make it beautiful as it is.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. And please remember to fill out your evaluation form, and please give our candidates a good round of applause.